Good morning, everyone. Brett Simon here. Thought I'd jump online, take some questions for you, and give you some answers. No particular agenda, so happy to take any of your questions, really. Happy to go into any topic. No real updates. I will just quickly show you Zarthisius's data, which shows how much activity there has been. We can see that 21,500 visas or so roughly have been issued so far. That's 21,242 plus these 278 from the AP column. When you see in SEAC the words administrative processing, those two words specifically, that means that your visa is being issued and it's part of the printing process. So I always count these, the 278, alongside the 21,242, the number of visas issued. Okay, that's reasonable progress. There was no visa bulletin movement for EU and Asia this month, almost none for Oceania and South America. Only Africa got an appreciable number of 2NLs. And I think given that tomorrow is the last day of the month, although it's technically possible that we will see some more 2NLs for this month, I think it's probably that's all we're going to see for this month. Why they did that, we don't really know. It could be because aliens have landed on the planet somewhere, for all we know. We just don't know why they do things sometimes, and it was annoying as hell. But let's see what they bring in a few days' time. The new visa bulletin will be out between the 8th and the 15th of the month, just as it always is, guys. Just as it always is. Okay, let's take some questions then. All right. Good morning, Joe. You're always one of the first on. You must be sitting by the computer all the time. And ciao, Justin. Hey, good morning to you. Okay, boring weeks in DV25. Yeah, a little bit boring, actually. You're absolutely right, Philip. Just nothing's happening. I mean, even on the data that you're showing there, most of the issuance activity tends to be towards the beginning of the month. And so in a quiet month like this month, it was like, well, not very much going on. But anyway, what do I think about the upcoming VB? I think there will be an upcoming VB. I think it'll be published between the 8th and the 15th of the month. That's about it. I've already given predictions. I haven't changed my predictions. The government may not follow my predictions, right? But I've predicted based on the mathematical possibility of what case numbers could be reached before the end of the year, right? And how we get there, I don't really know. I don't really care, as long as we get there. Now, if we don't get there, it will indicate that we're going to see an under issuance of visas, and that's technically possible. So if they don't reach my numbers, it means that they just didn't want to reach the full possibilities of the visas. That's possible. There's nothing legally stopping them doing that. On the other hand, over the last 2 or 3 years, they've given this sort of final push at the last minute. And I suspect we're going to see that sort of chaos again now. I'm leaning in that direction because, they just cost themselves a month for no particular reason. So, it's kind of frustrating. Anyway, thanks for the support. God bless you. Thank you. Will EU get to 20K? Yes, inevitably. Do you mean will they get to 20K in this next visa bulletin? I think because you're following from the other question. I hope they do. They should, in a sense. There's 4 visa bulletins left. They have to get, in my opinion, they have to get from 16,000 to 29,100, 13,100. That's my target, right? Anything more than that would be a plus. Anything less than that would be a huge disappointment. So they can't do that all in 1 month. If they had another month where they didn't move the visa bulletin very much, in Europe in particular, they would be creating themselves quite a bit of risk. And pushing the work till very late. Okay. When are they releasing the DV results? Early May, just like every year, just like they've told you in the instructions. They've given the precise date in the instructions when you entered the lottery. and it's available there for you to see online as well. So early May, just like every year. It's not going to change. Trust you're doing well. Just to disturb you, give an overview of the Cotonou embassy. Why would that disturb me? I don't know. But still, I still think it's surprising that people don't sort of have a look for this information themselves. But here's the way you could look at that. All right, we'll do it again because apparently it doesn't matter that I've already said this 17,000 times. I have to do it again. So we can go to DV charts, dvcharts.zarthisius.xyz, and we can go to the 2025 link, right? And we can type in the embassy that we're interested in seeing, and we can go look at the data, and we can see a couple of things. We can see how much they're taking on a monthly basis, right? They seem to be taking 30 per month. Pretty simple, right? In January, they took 30 2NLs. That's 2NLs, that's cases. So cases plus derivatives, right? So they took 30 cases. In February, they took 30 cases. In March, they took 30 cases. Pretty much a pattern there, don't you think, right? Now, by taking that 130 for the first 5 months and then 30 per month, where they got to was around about 30,000 or so, right? At around about, if we look at these blocks and we realize they're 2,000 a piece, we can see that their average number of cases per 1,000 is something like, let's call that about 6. So when they move by 30 cases, because 30 cases is the capacity that the embassy is setting, and it's fucking obvious that is the capacity that they're setting, right? Because it's 30 every single month. That's not because there's 30 people waiting for interview, is it? That's because 30 is the number of cases that embassy has written to KCC and said, we can take 30 cases this month. That's what capacity is. Remember, the embassies don't know or even give a damn how many people are waiting for interview. Their only role in this is to set the capacity and let KCC know. KCC maintain the list of people ready for interview. And so when Cotonou says we've got 30 places for interview this month, KCC will schedule 30 interviews. It really is that simple, folks. So far that's got them to about 30,000, just over 30,000. And 6 cases per 1,000 or so, they can move by about 5,000 in a month with 30 cases, right? So this month they will get to case numbers of 35,000 if, surprise, surprise, they do the same damn thing they've done in January and February and March. If they do that same thing in April, which would be shocking, right? I must have woken up on the sarcastic side of the bed this morning because I'm just like, I'm ripping into this. But anyway, if they do that same thing, they will move to about 35,000, right? We can see that, right? 35, maybe 36 or even 37,000, considering their highest case number is about just under 32, I'd imagine. Now, there's another way we can look at that. And I want to show you this other way because I think it's brilliant. And I appreciate the people that have done this. Our friend Narek developed a way of looking at data which is kind of cool, and then Zarthisius automated that, and then based on a sort of a hopeful sort of prod from me, Zarthisius then went and made the damn thing better. So this is like another way of looking at everything I just showed you and seeing, the data. So he's created this spreadsheet, which has got the number of cases per 1,000 in every embassy. If you're interested in Africa, you can click the Africa tab down the bottom, right? And then you can have a look at Cotonou, which is that one there that I'm highlighting, and I'll make this bigger for you so that you can actually see it on screen, right? And it's basically giving you the exact same data that I've just been showing you, saying that in the range of 31 to 32,000, there are 3 cases, right? That's where they got to. Now, if you scroll up and you get an average, and when you in a spreadsheet, when you highlight a bunch of data like that, it gives you an average down the bottom. So I guessed just by looking, eyeballing at that, I guessed at 6 cases per 1,000. It came out at 6.875, right? So 30 cases will give us a little bit less than 5,000. So yeah, I'm thinking that they will, and they're just under 32,000 now. And so I'm thinking they'll get to about 36,000 with scheduling, right, in Cotonou. Okay, now this was bloody obvious for you to do. If you've watched any of my videos before, I've often shown this technique. And I've also created a video that describes how to do what I just did for you. I'm really, really hoping that you guys are going to start to do this for yourselves. I'm much happier teaching you how to fish than giving you a fish, right? And I'm teaching you how to fish here. So, have a look. And then based on that information, if you know your number is, I don't know, 34,000, 35,000, then you can stop panicking and you can start realizing that, yeah, you're going to get your 2NL next month. If your number is 70,000, then you can do a little bit of math and say, even if the Africa region were to go current, if your number is 70,000 and the Africa region is going to go current, right? Then Cotonou, who are scheduling 30 cases per month in 4 remaining months, can only move to about 50 to 55,000, right? Because they've got 6.875 cases per 1,000 on average. Call it 7, right? So in 4 months of 30 cases per month, they would do 120 cases or 120 cases, which would take them 70, 84, call it 85 more sort of blocks, right? Hang on, I've sort of backed into some weird math there. So 120 times 7 is what I should be doing. 840. So that's the number of thousands, right? If you work out the number of thousands, let's do it the other way around and divide, right? So where's my calculator here? We're going to do 120 at 7. 120 divided by 7. That's a bit complicated for me to divide, but it's about 15. Where's my calculator, for goodness sake? What is my computer doing now? It's 120 days from today, it's just told me. What does that mean? Bloody AI is taking over my computer here. So let me just show you what I'm doing here to, a little bit of common sense. Divided by 7. So 17,000 blocks, right? So we would add 17,000 onto the 32,000 that Cotonou is at, right? And that tells us that they would get to about 49 to 50,000, right? So unless they increase their monthly or their sort of, the amount of capacity they have in the final month, for example, they can only get to about 50,000, numbers up to about 50,000, right? That's Cotonou. Now you can do that same exercise for a whole bunch of embassies, and you can actually get to the point where you can understand why my predictions are where they are, right? I've said that they can probably, it doesn't matter what they do with the Visa Bulletin, the capacity is kind of important. Like I just mentioned, they could make Africa current, let's say. I'm just using this for example. They could make Africa current, but it wouldn't help people in Cotonou above about 50,000 because there isn't enough monthly capacity in Cotonou to get there. They've only got enough monthly capacity to serve about another 17,000 case numbers, right? At 7 a month. Now, if they increase that to 40 per month or 50 per month, then, that's a different story, but we'd have to see that happening, right? So, so hopefully you guys are sort of understanding this, do a little bit of math yourself, and think about what that means for your case, right? Have a look at the capacity of your embassy is showing. Now, it's a little bit difficult for some of these sporadic embassies. So Addis and Accra have been a bit weird this month, right? We know that. let me show you this data, and we'll go and have a look at Addis. They did a bit of a weird thing. So Addis came out the gate, this year. In the first 5 months, they scheduled 933, and it's like, oh wow, they're doing really well. That's really great, right? And then 229 in the month of January were scheduled for March interviews. In February, they scheduled another 220. So their monthly capacity that they were setting was in excess of 200, in excess of 220, right? So that's really cool. But then in March, they did nothing. Now, technically, they could take some more 2NLs, tomorrow or even over the next few days, right? In this coming week, they could do. It's technically possible. We have seen it before, but it's looking not very likely, because if they had wanted to do that, they probably would have done it already, right? As Philip said earlier, it's been pretty quiet this month, and they haven't done that, right? Which means that they're probably going to be taking no cases, at all. Now, what's really happened there, we don't know, but it may be that when we look at the 229 and the 220, that's an ambitious number, and maybe they got to the point where they said, oh, hang on a minute, we can't really handle this 220 capacity every month. We've got all this leftover work, and we're getting behind with, approving the visas, issuing the visas, doing our final checks after the interviews and so on. We're getting behind with that work, so we're just going to take a month out. It could also mean that they've got some, some staff sick. Could mean that, it could be a bunch of things. We don't really know, right? So, we have to wait and see what they're going to do next. We don't know whether they're going to return to their 200 per month capacity, or whether they're going to come back with a smaller number. And currently, they're a little bit backlogged, right? They've only scheduled cases up to about 26,500 or something. So that means that, again, you can do this math. You can see how many they've got per 1,000, and you can sort of figure out whether they're going to get your case number or not. All of this you can do for yourselves, right? You really don't need me at all. I'm completely useless at this point. Anyway, oh yes, it's Eid Mubarak. Yes, congratulations to those that celebrate that. Thank you for that. There's another, as well as Eid, there's something else this month, this week. There's another holiday, I think, tomorrow, and I can't remember which it is. Case number 29100 EU, can it pass? Well, if you've been a listener, you'll be hearing that that's the number that I talk about, right? So for a specific reason. Whose name is Philip. Hybrid is the same country for interview that the medical have to be done. Yes, typically. So if you're going to be interviewed in let's say in London, you need to look up the website that the embassy has to say which are the physicians that they approve to do your medical. And it'll be, in fact, it's Harley Street in London, which is bad news for anyone interviewing in London, because Harley Street is the world's most expensive healthcare. So you're probably going to spend a small fortune on that. But yeah, they've got an arrangement. Every embassy has an arrangement with their local physician, and that's the physician that they have empowered and entrusted to fill out their reports, and that any specific requirements the embassy makes, for medical reports, etc., that's arranged with those physicians. So you can't turn up with for an interview in London having been having gone through the medical in Croatia or something. That's not going to help you. You have to do it at the right place where the embassy says you can do it. And typically that's the same country. There's some exceptions to that, some other arrangements in specific cases, but typically that's where you do the medical. Okay. Okay. Somebody who hasn't realized that as a Brit, even though I was taught French in school, I take the same political position on speaking French as the French take in the Eurovision Song Contest. So I don't translate. Spanish I kind of do sometimes, but not French, and German I do a little bit as well. I got 4 languages I was taught, but yeah, not going to do French. Hello, sir. Just wanted to let you to ask you, how much time does it take to get citizenship after joining military? Okay, so there is a bit of a fast path option by joining certain branches of the military. You need to look into this yourself. There is a guy who became pretty popular within one of the Telegram channels, an Aussie guy called Pete. Now, Pete researched this very carefully himself. He was reaching an age where he would no longer be able to enlist in the military, and that particular time was, I think, in March of this year. So he was desperate to interview and get his green card before that point. He did that. He got his green card in January, and he went a little bit dark. I've spoken to him a couple of times by email, but he went a little bit dark in terms of the Telegram channel. As far as I'm aware, I believe he's okay and well. But I don't know if he's continued with his plans to join the military. I know he started to, but I don't know if he actually did that. But his whole reasoning for doing that was an accelerated time when he could become a citizen. And for him, he was saying that could be certainly within the year, and perhaps faster. So it fast tracks your ability to get a citizenship. For other people, it's typically 5 years. If you marry a US citizen, you could speed that up. It could be 3 years. But generally speaking, being in certain branches of the military, certain situations, you need to look into it yourself. That can accelerate it. If citizenship is what you want, then serving the military in the military could be the way to fast track that. Okay. I mean, no real need to, but in some people have positions where, in Peter's case, he wanted to be a citizen as fast as possible. There is an advantage of being a citizen compared to being a green card holder. One thing is being able to vote, but it's also the position that it puts you in to sponsor family members. If you're a citizen sponsoring family members, that can be much faster, right? And much faster than you've got more options than if you're a green card holder. So that's what some people might want to do. They might want to get their citizenship fast so that they can bring their parents, for example, while their parents are still young, right? That's what they want. They're doing that for. Samanda, that's a strange name. That's like someone who was going to call their kid Sarah, but then also liked the name Amanda, and so called them Samanda. That's kind of strange. Hi, Britt. In case of change of interview location, by changing the address in the DS260, does it mean getting a police clearance for the new address? Depends on timing, right? If you have to, if you say you're resident in a new country and you've been there for more than 6 months, then yes, you have to provide a police certificate for that. So the trick, I suppose, is to use some common sense and not move to that country too soon, right? So you want to move there soon enough that it changes the location of your interview, but not so soon that you need to get a police certificate, let's say. Unless you want to get a police certificate. If it's fairly easy to get the police cert, then go and do that, right? But yes, it's you've got to figure that out for yourself. You've got to read between the lines a little bit. Talk about Accra Embassy, same sort of deal as Addis, right? Let me just have a quick look here. They took 300 cases in January, then 150 cases in February, and nothing so far in March, right? Now, if you're asking me to predict, and by the way, they're up to about 30,000, and their average per 1,000 is something like what is it? Around about 13, 14 per 1,000, right? Now, there is obviously the big question is what are they going to do next, right? But I can't tell you what their capacity is on a certain, with certainty, because number one, they haven't scheduled any for March yet. And number two, in January, they took 300, and then in February, they took 150. They halved that, right? So what's going to be their capacity going forward? They used to do about 30 per month. So we certainly don't want them to return to that lazy pace, right? And if they are scheduling 150 per month, and let's say their average is less than 15, which it looks like it is, probably below 15, maybe it's a little bit higher than that, actually. It could be a little bit higher than that. But if it's that, then they can move 10,000 case numbers per month, which means that they can get almost all the way to the end, right? They only need, in other words, they only need to be doing about 150 interviews per month. So I'm hopeful that they will do that, right? It's slightly more comforting than some other embassy. For example, you may not have realized what I was explaining about Coton, it's all a matter of the capacity, right? Hi, Britt. Nairobi still waiting. Have you heard anything? Nope, they don't contact me. Neither Addis, Accra, Nairobi, Cotonou, Freetown. None of them are sending me emails saying, "Hey, Simon, how you doing? We thought we'd give you the background information." None of them are doing that, right? So no, I haven't heard anything. I've got no sort of inside track on any information. I hear what you hear, basically. Hi, Britt, please, what does it mean when your status goes AP after 2 weeks of approval? I already addressed that earlier on. So if you mean the words you're seeing in SEAC, the words administrative processing, it means your visa is being printed right now. Elvin says, hello, Britt, what do you think about the density going down on AF region? Is going to push VB to a higher number, or it's going to continue with the 5K range? I've said where it's going to get to at the end, right? So, I think that we're going to see in Africa numbers. I mean, mathematically, we should see numbers up to about 55 to 60,000 going current. And if you look at the embassy data, the way I was just showing, you can see that for many embassies, that's a reality. That's, that's possible, right? Based on their capacity. So if they've got to get to 60,000, let's say they're going to get to 60,000, and we're currently at 35, right? That's 25,000 over a 4-month period, right? So divide 25 by 4, and that's kind of the prediction. Now, will it be a bit more 1 month and a bit less 1 month? Probably, right? But, it's got to be at least 5,000, I would say, but maybe more like we're going to see some 7,000 and 8,000 months, right? That's probably what will happen. Maybe we'll see a 10,000 month. I don't know. But, I'm hoping it will get to that sort of level. What we might see is 3 months of, let's say, an increase of about 5 or maybe 6,000, and then a fairly big jump at the end. We might see this sort of, the last minute effort factor, where they just say, okay, we're going to let all the embassies that can schedule cases, we're going to let them schedule cases, and the ones that can't, bad luck. Right? They may take that view. That's what they did before. So we'll have to wait and see. Okay. Hi, Simon. I was just wondering about the Asia region and whether case number AS 13,000 is safe for Abu Dhabi. Depends on Abu Dhabi. Depends on what that embassy does. Let's have a look. Abu Dhabi. They are obviously backlogged, right? So they've got the, this is interesting looking data. Okay, yeah, for Asia, they're pretty much up to date, right? They're up to about 6,500. So they're not backlogged in Asia. In Africa, they appear backlogged, but it's probably because they don't have so many cases from that region. EU, yeah, you can't really see much from that. But what is this? Hang on a minute. Where are all these cases? Okay, now I'm not understanding this. Where are all these cases coming from? Oh, that's because it changes. Damn, so this is such a clever man. Right, so yeah, so their biggest batch of cases come from Asia. They're taking around about 50 cases from Asia for every 1,000 case numbers. They did not take any cases in January, but they did in February and they did in March. They took about 30, right, in March. So, you know, they are still moving. You can do the math that I just showed you to see whether you think it's plausible that they get to your number, right? Go ahead and do that. Let me know in the chat down there what you find, okay? My case status didn't change to transit and no 2NL received this month. For the case range being ready this month, being scheduled for May, Aberdeen Embassy. Why? Okay. So why didn't you get a 2NL? I don't know. I mean, you know, you didn't tell me anything useful for me to be able to go and look that up. And I don't know everybody's case number by name, right? So when you come on and you give me a name and you say why, it doesn't really help me at all. It doesn't help me help you because I don't know anything about you. I don't know, you know, your case number or anything about you, right? Kind of frustrating, really, when you think about it, isn't it? Hi, Asia 9000. Is it risk? Please advise us. Not particularly, but again, look at the case data for the embassy you're at. You know. Okay. Hello, Britt. AF1753, thanks very much for your guidance through the process. It's 3 weeks now. Bronx, New York. Any advice? Sammy's lifestyle. Yeah, spoken to you many times, right? Any advice? You're in the Bronx. That's good, you know, good sort of vibrant area to be. My advice would basically be don't live like an American. And you'll see in a video that's going to be published in a couple of days, you'll see why I'm saying that. I think Americans live too much in debt. I don't think it's smart to live in debt. I think when you do that, you make bankers and others wealthy and you stay poor yourself. So I would say do everything you can to work as hard as you can. Make sure your income is higher than your expenses and make sure you're saving and investing the difference between your, you know, that you're over earning compared to what you're spending, right? Spend little, earn more, and save the money. And with the money, then go and put the money to work for you. And that's what smart people in America do. But the majority of people in America are not smart. Quite honestly, they're not. And I'll show you some data this week that's going to, you know, make your hair curl. They're just not smart. Harrison, still waiting for Nairobi. Okay. Brett, can you predict when EU25 will become current? I think I've already discussed that, right? I mean, I've talked about that a lot. So, hello, boss. What is your prediction for Freetown Embassy? Can they send 2NLs up to 19K next month? Please go and do what I just explained in detail what to do, right? What about Nairobi? Still nothing. Hi, Brett. What happy 2NL May up to now? I don't know what that sentence means. 27K from Addis, or in, as you put it, Addis. Well, that's a pretty comfortable place to be. As long as they take some interviews, then you'll be fine, right? But I don't know when they're going to take their next interviews. Sam, if one of my members' family applied twice in our familial application and also his own. Now I've got to look for the rest of the message. You didn't post the rest of the message, so I don't know what you're asking. Somebody at Ankara, do you think EU 7000 case number will have a chance for interview? If yes, when could it be? Ankara is a complete mystery. I don't know what they're going to continue to do. You can have a look at the data, same as I've just explained it, but try and look at it on, you know, sort of a number of interviews basis, a capacity basis. Look at it for Asia, look at it for EU, see what you think. You know, I don't know. I haven't looked at that. To be honest, I just give up with Ankara because I don't know what the heck they think they're doing. It's just ridiculous. I don't know why they think it's okay. But, you know, we'll see. Do you think I get a chance to be called OC 2050? You're on the sort of cusp of where I think OC could get to. OC went pretty fast, right? It got to, what, 1600 pretty quickly, and then it sort of got bogged down. And I think they're going to continue with small increases from this point. It's possible that they complete before 2000, possible. But if any of the other regions don't meet their capacity in terms of the quota, then we could see OC sort of overtaking, taking more visas. So it's difficult to say yes, it's difficult to say no. Your case number is in the sort of the possible range, right? But not guaranteed safe, not guaranteed unsafe, just in the possible range. You have to wait and see, I'm afraid. Okay. Is the 2NL only sent once in a month? No, they're sent more than that. Typically, what we've seen in the past is that they used to have a sort of a 2 times a month where they would send sort of batches. There would be a flurry of activity just after the Visa Bulletin is published. And over a 2, a 3, or 4 day period, we would see a lot of 2NLs coming out, right? And then later on in the month, towards the end of the month, there would be another flurry of activity, another small sort of release of 2NLs, etc. This month, they've done the first bit, but they didn't do the second bit yet, right? So that's a bit weird. It may be that what they did in the first part was one sort of big batch that covered all of the interviews that they wanted to do, but we just have to wait and see. There's not a particularly predictable thing about 2NLs. I talk about, for example, there's also this thing that they tend to go through the embassies alphabetically. They do, it's sort of accurate, but it's not 100% accurate. It's not a rule. So they mix it up a little bit. There's some things that they do on a regular basis, but it doesn't mean that they have to do it that way. So, we just have to wait and see, basically. Applied based on place of birth, UAE. What do you think of that? Originally from Pakistan. Well, why? what do you mean? What do I think of that? Right? If you follow the rules, then you're not originally from Pakistan. You were from the UAE, right? So because that's where you were born. Now, unless there was something that happened in your life prior to being born, I don't think so. I think being born was the first part of your life. So you're originally from UAE, but regardless of where you were then raised, you were raised, I presume, in Pakistan. That's why you say you're originally from Pakistan. But you were born in UAE, so you should be applying under the place where you're born, unless you've got good reason to not do that, right? But in your case, yeah, you applied in the place of birth. That's fine. That's normal, right? Nothing really to think about it. Do I recommend Nigeria, Lagos, US Embassy for DV interviews? No fucking way. Like the last time Lagos actually did a DV interview was years ago. I'm not kidding, years ago, right? They're not doing any interviews. So why the hell would you try and get interviewed in Lagos? Right, so DV25, no interviews in Lagos, right? Let's see, DV24, let's check there. Lagos, Nigeria. Let's have a look. Lagos. Come on, what are you doing? Come on, South Issues. I know you're there. No 2NLs in the whole of DV24. Let's go back to DV23 and have a look there, right? Let me show you what I'm doing here, just for a giggle. Like Lagos, Nigeria, no interviews in DV23. How about in DV22? Did they do any then? Let's scroll down. Let's check that. Lagos, Nigeria. Yeah. Oh, they did some in DV22. So back in 2022, over 3 years ago, they did some interviews. But to go and expect them to do interviews for DV25 seems like a pretty bad bet, don't you think? So it's not like we don't have the data. We have the data. And I know, and I'm sad about this, but there are some people out there that don't know my YouTube channel and don't know about Zarthisius's website. And so they're running around with no clue what they're doing. And those people might have applied for an interview in Lagos, believing that the Lagos embassy gave a damn. And apparently the Lagos embassy doesn't give a damn about DV, which is why they've just ignored every single case for several years, right? They've just ignored them. Now, it's not, it's not. I mean, the thing is, there are no Nigerians allowed to enter the lottery. No, if you're born in Nigeria, you're not eligible. But there must be people from other countries living in Nigeria that want to have their interview there, and so it's not excusable that that the embassy in Lagos has done no DV interviews for several years since 2022. It's not excusable. That's pathetic. But it's what we know that they're doing. And so you'd have to be a bloody lunatic to schedule your interview there. If you know the information that I'm giving, if you know the information that exists from, from Zarthisius. So, we've got the data. No, it's a bloody terrible choice. Don't go to Lagos. Mr. Simon, is it really DV program is stopped or? No, it's not stopped. Why do people keep saying this? The DV program has not been stopped. Trump has not stopped it. Nobody has stopped it, right? I mean, you can keep believing nonsense you hear on the internet if you want to. And I know you're hearing these things on the internet from presumably YouTubers and blogs or websites that don't know what the fuck they're talking about. That's possible. I get that. But why would you believe it? Because you would presumably go on Google and or a search engine of any sort and just check the information. It hasn't been stopped. And if you want accurate information, I'm sure if you were just paying attention to the stuff I put out there, I'm sure you would understand it's not been stopped, because I answer this question absolutely categorically every time I'm asked it. It's not been stopped. Stop asking. Giddy says, when transferring a case that's not yet current, after I contact KCC to unlock my DS-260 for me to change physical address, do I need to ask them to change embassy for interview, or will it be automatic? I recommend you ask them. And in fact, if they do have a template letter that actually suggests you should contact them after you've changed address. So what I say in my blog article, where I explain how to change embassies, which, by the way, you can find by Googling the word Brit Simon, change embassies, right? It's as complicated as that. And, my blog article on this exact topic would come up probably in the first position, right? So when you Google those words, you'll get to an article where I explain that, yes, you're supposed to change your address in your DS-260. And then a week or two later, you casually ask KCC to go and make sure that they have scheduled you or will schedule you in the new country where you now live, right? So, yeah, do that. It's worth doing. I wouldn't trust them to do it automatically. I would prod them gently, politely, prod them and try and get that answer where they say, and their response, another templated letter that comes back and says, based on the information you have provided, your address has been changed to blah, 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 right? Or there's another template letter they use. It's a little bit similar to that. When I say letter, by the way, I do mean email. They don't send any physical letters. It's always just email. Okay. Prediction for upcoming Visa Bulletin for Oceania. I don't know. I think we're going to see increases of around about 75 or 100 in Oceania from here to the end. Roughly, that's what I think. And that's in line with my original predictions that I made back in October. I think I've posted the Oceania prediction back in October or November, a long time ago, and I haven't changed my opinion. And the data that's happening is kind of showing that I was right. So we'll see. Hello, sir. My case number is 52,000 with Dakar Embassy. Should I be hopeful? No, what you should be is checking the data as I've shown how you should be doing it. Is there still hope for DV26? Of course there's still hope. Well, how could there not be hope? It's not being stopped, people. It's not stopped, right? So yes, DV26 will happen. Hi, Simon. Hope you're well. My question is, if I need a sponsor, I'm DV25 winner. Should they file the I-134 or I-864? If only there was a blog article that described exactly that. You could, for example, put in the words into Google that says Brit Simon 134 or 864, or I-134 or I-864, and guess what will come up? an article will come up saying, should I use the I-134 for a DV lottery or should it be I-864? It's an article that says exactly that, right? You know, I don't know. So I'm saying you type in here, Google the words Brit Simon, 134, which I type a lot, or 864. Oops, 864. And we have this really helpful sort of thing called Google that knows me, right? And if it gives AI answers, a lot of the AIs are quoting me, right? They're saying, here's the answer, and we get this, and the source of the information is Brit Simon, right? But okay, so here's the thing: should I be using the I-134 or the I-864? And every so often, quite often actually, I see people challenging the understanding that DV lottery cases use the I-134. They've read about the I-864, and they think it's a requirement, blah, 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 right? So if you just want the punchline, it says here, if you just want the punchline, for DV lottery cases, you just use the I-134. There's no possible way you can use the I-864. You're not legally permitted to do so, right? I've explained that in a little bit more detail. I've explained the differences between the I-134 and the I-864, and you can read all that if you want, right? And it also tells you how the federal poverty guideline is applied, blah, blah, blah. Loads of really good information, and I've quoted from the government's own rule book, and it says, if you determine the following types of applicants need an affidavit of support to meet their public charge requirement, they may use form I-134, as they are not authorized to use form I-864 or 864W. And so these are the categories of immigrants that are allowed to use the I-134, right? Which is diversity. That's us, right? So I don't know. There's a whole article there. I don't know. But you could also, for example, you can type the words in Google Brit Simon 134, and you get. Whoops, hang on. You get this one. Actually, I put in 864. Let me just correct that. Yeah, just that. So if I just search for 134, you get this other article. It was listed second in the other thing, but all about the public charge. There's information about that, right? You can find all of that. It's kind of interesting. You could also use the search feature here where you click that little thing and you type the 864, for example, and it's going to give you search results like that. There's a search feature on my blog with 10 years of information just sort of on there. I don't know, that seems like it might be useful. Google's pretty useful. It brought you to all about the public charge. I mean, all about the public charge and affidavit of support, the whole thing that's explained there. I've also got another article that says a new form was published, and then I created a video that says how the new version of the thing could be completed, right? And another one that says new video about public charge and completing the I-134. And there's the difference one, and there's and then the link to my channel, right? It's almost like, I don't know, you tell me if you think this is possible, but it's almost like Google knows me, right? And knows and if I just put the word Brit Simon in Google, it's almost like it understands that it should show you information from me, right? I don't know. I don't know how the internet works. I just think that's what's going on there. I think it kind of knows me somehow. So, you can have a look. But, fingers crossed. Can I tell you how Sierra Leone is working this year? No, because I've shown you how you can do it yourself. Do you think South America will have the same prediction? It could reach higher case numbers. I've done a prediction video for South America. You could probably get Google, which is friends of mine. You could probably go there and sort of Google that. Hello, sir. I talked about digital email manipulation earlier. What? I'm more worried about not being selected of it rather than the interview. The photo passed the green check call. What? Oh, okay. You don't mean earlier today. I'm like, so what? So you're more worried about not being selected because of it rather than the interview. The photo passed the green check photo tool. Can you do anything about this? Shiva, can you do anything about it? Right? There's this old sort of thought process that says if you can't do anything about it, then don't worry about it, right? So running around every couple of weeks, coming onto my YouTube channel and asking questions because you're worried about this is kind of pointless, because I can't fix it for you. You can't fix it for you. It's done now, right? And so in DV26, the answers will be out and you may not be selected. And you'll probably think it's because you manipulated the photo in some way. And it, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but there's only a 1 in 100 year chance to be selected anyway, right? So it's not like you had a certain guaranteed winning entry and then all of a sudden you did something stupid and now you didn't win. That's not the situation here. You had a 1 in 100 year chance of being selected, and you're worrying about the bloody photo manipulation, even though I've made it very clear what you can and can't do. I don't know. Just seems like you're wasting your time a little bit. Thanks, Brett. I became successful in my DV journey through your guidance. Love from the Gambia. What are you doing in the Gambia? You should be over here in America. Why are you not over here, Charlie? But anyway, I'm happy that you were successful. Is there a chance that it'll still be caught in their filter for manipulation, not be selected? The chances. You want me to give you the chances now, Shiva? I'm sorry, no. Oh, God, because of the digital manipulation that I mentioned. Nana says, my case number is 11,000. I submitted in January with interview at Sierra Leone. Can you tell me how much they are doing? You can have a look at the data for that embassy, right? Oh, sorry, Joshua, will they get to 55K? I assume you mean for Africa. We'll have to wait and see. I certainly think so, right? But I don't know exactly what they're doing, but I think they will. And my predictions in January, certainly indicated that they will be over 55K, right? Okay. Excuse me. Suppose the travel ban is made official and my country is in the yellow list, which means it has 60 days to rectify whatever. Can a person with a visa travel within the 60 days? Yeah, because as you just said, it means they've got 60 days to rectify whatever reason they were put onto the list. In other words, the red, orange, yellow thing said red was banned, and it made that very clear. It said orange is banned, right? Certain circumstances, etc. But for the yellow list, they weren't banned, but they might go on to the ban list if they don't rectify these things. So during the meantime, those countries on the yellow list would not be banned. Now, actually, I'm glad you've asked this question, because although it's a dopey question, because you already know the answer, right? Because you just gave the answer in your question. So, it's kind of a weird question to ask. But it's important we talk about the travel ban, because there was a lot of concern about the travel ban, and the government have been less than honest, surprise, surprise, about their discussions about the travel ban. There's been a representative of the government saying, oh, what travel ban? We've never discussed a travel ban. No. Even though multiple news agencies were able to discover the inside track and actually turned out this list of red, orange, and yellow. But the government saying, no, nothing to see here. We haven't got any plans about a travel ban. No. So, unless you're an idiot, it's clear that the government has been planning to implement a travel ban, right? And it was supposed to have been, there was supposed to be a report produced, which was supposed to be on the 20th of March. And so people assumed that would be the time of the travel ban, that the report would come out and it would instantly mean that there was a travel ban. Now, that hasn't happened, right? Now, that's kind of interesting for a start. It's like, okay, well, that should teach us to not sort of be too worried about travel bans until they actually happen, which I'm pretty sure I know someone who's always said that. But, we'll see. So, there isn't a travel ban at the moment. There are clearly plans about implementing a travel ban, but it's by no means certain that there would be a travel ban, right? I was actually expecting, with all this chaos that was happening in the government this week, what they really, the American government did a stupid thing. They can't even handle a group chat session without fucking that up. And so when they did that stupid thing, what they would normally have done, any sensible administration would have done two things. They would have answered honestly about, what happened, and then they would have given a full answer, and they would have moved on. And if necessary, they would have released some other distracting piece of information, some other distraction. Like, for example, they would have implemented a travel ban, right? Governments have behaved that way for years, and smart governments, do that. What did the Trump administration do? Number one, they got into stupid arguments about what they had or hadn't done, or whether this was classified information or not classified information. And they pointed out that the newspaper journalist, was a complete loser, blah, blah, blah. And they made this a much bigger deal by their frankly stupid reaction to this whole thing. They sent Tulsi Gabbard in to testify before Congress. And one day she's saying, no, there's no classified information. And the next day she has to sit in another Congress thing, and reverse her position, right? So the government made complete idiots of themselves for days. And the perfect thing that they would have done is push some other piece of news so that the newspapers had something else to focus on. And so I was assuming that it would actually push out the travel ban, because it would have got everyone worked up about that, right? But they didn't do that either. This is the dumbest administration that we have seen for many, many years, and the stupidest president we have seen for a long time, and the most mind-numbingly dopey bunch of people surrounding him that unfortunately are doing a lot of things, right? They are, Marco Rubio is standing up and just openly saying that, we don't have freedom of speech in this country, because if you say something that's going to upset Marco, poor little Marco, then, you're going to lose your visa, or you'll be, and we'll deport you and everything else. It seems like Marco didn't really learn about the Constitution, so he's about to get some constitutional lessons. But in the meantime, he'll cause a lot of angst and upset. But that's just because we've got a bunch of morons running the White House and running our government at the moment. Sorry about that, but even if you agree with some of the things they're doing, by the way, to try and sniff out fraud and waste in everything in the government, and some of that is perfectly legitimate, the way they're going around things is like so stupid. It's the way they're doing things that is dumb. So anyway, but the point being, we don't have a travel ban yet, right? And so make hay while the sun shines. Get here as soon as you can. If you have a visa, don't assume that there isn't going to be a ban, right? We'll see. 47K here in Algeria. When am I supposed to have an interview? When it's your turn. Go have a look at the data, please. Do you think OC 2050? Oh, you've already asked me. So DS260 has been processed and I'm 55K. When will I go current? And are there possibilities for me to be current? Right. So I've already covered my earlier predictions, and you're at the upper end of that range, right? So your most likely time to become current, if you get current, which I think you will, but if you get current, it will probably be in the last month, maybe the last 2 months, maybe August and September interviews, right? That means 2NLs in June or July, typically, right? So that's roughly what you should expect. Hi, sir. Any thoughts on Trump tanking the DV altogether, bypassing Congress, doing underhanded stuff as usual, being that it's part of Project 25 and he's already accomplished 1/3 of Project 25? No, because, what he's doing, a lot of it is in the realm of executive authority, right? Or at least he's trying to argue that. I mean, but a lot of what isn't in the realm of executive authority has been instantly stamped on by the courts. And it's driving Trump mad to think that he can't just do whatever he thinks of next. In fact, I don't even think it's Trump thinking of these things, by the way. I think you're right to point out Project 25, because that was like a playbook that people around Trump are now sort of trying to get pieces of that playbook in front of Trump to get him to do those things. And Trump, frankly, doesn't give a damn. So, he's just doing whatever seems to make people happy around him. But he can't directly head on take on, things like, canceling the DV program. I say he can't. He can't from a legal point of view. It apparently doesn't seem to stop him saying stuff, right? When he came out and just said about that gold card thing, selling green cards for $5 million a pop and calling them gold cards. He can't do that. That takes an act of law that, takes a law to be passed and everything else. He can't do that. He can't create a new visa type and procedures to getting it just by waving a magic wand. He can't do that. In the same way that he couldn't take away birthright citizenship by waving a magic wand. I mean, those things, if he tried to do those things, they would be challenged. Of course, there was a complete moron in his administration that said he'd sold 1,000 of the $5 million green cards. Completely idiotic. But none of that has really happened. And a lot of what Trump has tried to do by executive order has immediately been blocked by the courts, and they've got every right to block him. So, no, he's not going to do that, Arya. He's an impotent president when it comes to that sort of stuff, right? Erdem, 27. Well, the when for EU 27K is obvious, like 55K for Africa, right? It's going to be towards the end. Okay, let's see. I see Erdem thought it was a good idea to just repeat the question 49,000 times. He thought that would make me happy. Thoughts on Auckland Embassy compared to the speed Fiji embassy processes? Is Auckland particularly slow compared to Fiji and Sydney? Not particularly slow. It's got a lot less people, right? The majority, if you look at Oceania selectees, the majority of those by far are going to be interviewed at Suva. Auckland, New Zealand has become much less of a number within the OC overall budget, right? Suva or Fiji came through from behind and has taken over the lead from what used to be the leader, Sydney, Australia rather. And New Zealand used to be sort of there or thereabouts, but it's much smaller now in terms of the overall OC budget. So a lot more people are entering the lottery from Fiji as compared to those entering the lottery from Australia and New Zealand. And so there's a lot more winners from Fiji because there's a lot more entries and so on, right? So I wouldn't be particularly worried about Auckland. I think they're doing what they need to be doing. Let's just have a look at their data. Yeah, I mean, they haven't scheduled many people, but they've scheduled people every month, right? And if we look at OC numbers, they're completely up to date. They're not backlogged at all. There's no problem at all. Even though they're only scheduling 1 or 2 people per 100, that's all they have to do. There's not a huge number of selectees there. Okay, that's what that means. Geez, Erdem, you are on my shit list, young man, for posting that 78,000 times. Stop spamming, you doofus Erdem. Asking once is enough, not 15 times. Thank you, AA Roy. That's, you're putting it much better than I did. If I'd have known, AA Roy, that this guy was spamming, yes, you're right, I would have ignored him just because I saw him spamming. But unfortunately, I saw his question before I saw he was spamming. Wasn't part of cases batch being scheduled for May interviews and high cases. The mind got. Oh, again, I say you've managed to ask another question which I've read. It got my attention. I read it, but you didn't give me any useful information. Again, second time. Man, oh man. Can you give a retrospective of the Bulgarian embassy in Sofia? Only because it's the same name as my daughter. That's why. So they are obviously going to be taking EU cases. They've scheduled EU cases up to about 16,000. Looks like they are completely up to date. They're not backlogged at all. They're just a quiet embassy, right? They don't have many cases, but that's not to say that they are taking too few cases. They're taking the right number of cases that they need to take. The fact that they get a very small number each month is simply because there's not many people interviewing there. Okay. VJ says, I'll do a couple more questions, then we'll call it a day. So, good afternoon. My case number is AF58K plus 25. Can I get a chance to apply through AOS? If yes, in which month can you expect to apply P? Please. It's a good question. So, if you're in the USA already, then you have the ability to apply through adjustment of status. You must be in legal status here. You can't be out of status for any time that you've been here. But if you've been in legal status and you've got something like an F1 or a J1 visa or something like that, and you're here in the States, then you can go through an adjustment of status process. And there are certainly some advantages to doing that. One disadvantage used to be that it was slower to do that, right? Because if your number becomes current for September interviews, you might think, well, hang on a minute, normal adjustment of status takes about a year. How am I going to get that through if I only become current for interview in September? And there's two answers that make that possible, right? So the first thing is that they put in place an early filing policy, which means that when in July you see that visa bulletin release that's going to make you eligible for interview in September, as soon as you see that visa bulletin released, you're eligible to file your case. It's the early filing policy. Again, as I was explaining earlier, you can find that on my blog. You can find information on the internet. You can get information from the very best source on DV lottery adjustment status, which is someone's mum at forums.immigration.com. She's brilliant, and you should be trusting her and listening to her in everything she says about DV-related adjustment of status. Nobody knows more, right? So number one, you prepare to use the early filing policy. Number two, you realize that mostly the consular officers and the consulates, not the consulates, what am I talking about? The field offices take DV cases down an unusually fast path for adjustment of status. It doesn't take 9 months or a year, whatever is the waiting time you see on the internet. It goes much faster than that. So generally speaking, if you become current in the final month, even the final month, and you file using the early filing policy in July, you do have time to adjust status before the end of the year, September 30th. It must be done by then. You can't, if you don't get it done in time, then you lose your chance entirely, right? But generally speaking, 9 times out of 10, probably higher than that, it works out fine, even for people that file in July. Okay, so you'll be fine. Okay. Yeah, Roy, again, I agree with you entirely. I should have ignored him. Okay, so mind you, I see that you're then saying that over and over again, Roy. But then, yeah, I mean, Erdem, you are being a bit of a knob, and you need to stop being a knob, right? Okay, so let me just find one more decent question here. I'm scrolling down. Oh dear. Okay. This is kind of an interesting question. I don't get these sort of questions that often these days. Hi, Simon. I went for the interview with my wife in Accra, but they gave us our passports back and asked us to produce copies of calls and chat between us from 2019 till date. And it's interesting that they've specified a timeline like that. But there's obviously the question they've asked you is because they suspect that your marriage is not genuine in some way. They may suspect that the evidence you've provided about your marriage is fraudulent. they may suspect, other stuff. I don't know. It's a little bit worrying. The fact that they've asked you to go back to 2019 is kind of weird. I presume you said you were married from 2019. And so they want to see evidence of the relationship. It may be that they've got other information that you're not privy to, that you don't know that they've got, because it sounds very specific, very particular. So if there's any question at all that you're doing some sort of fraud, not that that ever happens in Accra, right? Or Western Africa. I mean, there's no fraud there. But if you are doing something that's a bit naughty, then I suggest you stop as soon as possible and walk away. So because trying to put a fraud over on the US government's not smart. It's not a good thing to do. And so, if you are doing something naughty, then just don't continue the process and put this down to experience. If, on the other hand, you've been married since 2019, and it's a real genuine marriage and everything else, then do exactly what they've asked you to do. An honest person who's not guilty doesn't have anything to fear, right? So you can just provide all of that information. That's what they've asked for. Provide it. Okay, everybody. Right. I think we'll call that a day. While I'm here, let me just go find something for a moment. And let me just find this one. Yeah, ban user and delete their comments. There we go. Let me just do that. Bye, Erdem. See ya. Right. So thanks everyone for joining. Hopefully I've given you some information. A lot of your questions are questions that you can answer for yourselves. And I've consistently shown the methods on how to do that, which is why I use my unique combination of humor and sarcasm to demonstrate to you that you should be doing that stuff for yourself. I'm happy to answer any questions. I really am. But I've tried to empower you so that you get the idea of this information yourselves. You are in a much better position if you understand how to find information for yourself about the DV lottery, and how to ignore some of the nonsense that you're hearing and that sort of thing. So please do that. Okay. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining me this morning. Hope it was helpful, and I'll see you next week. And look out for a video being published in a couple of days' time. I think you'll find it interesting. Okay. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye.